Families in Ontario who have school-aged children with autism will have to continue to foot the bill for costly treatment. The Ontario Court of Appeal ruled today that the province does not have to pay for therapy for children ages 6 and older. Today's decision means families will have to pay $30,000 to $80,000 per year for this specialized treatment. A previous ruling said the cutoff age for covering costs was discriminatory. The government says this treatment doesn't work on older kids. There are roughly 8,000 children suffering autism in Ontario. Joining us now in Ottawa is Andrew Kovchuk. He has a child who is autistic. He considers himself an autism treatment activist. He joins us now. Sir, what do you make of this ruling today?
Well, I find it's a very depressing ruling on several fronts. It's left me entirely depressed all day, and looking forward to a big struggle ahead.
Well, the government's reasoning goes this way, that treatment after the age of 5 simply doesn't help.
Oh, that's not true at all.
I'm sorry, how is it not true?
Well, it isn't true. The thing is that the studies have all indicated that the application of intensive behavior intervention therapy treatment immediately upon a diagnosis will give the child the maximum development chances and possibilities to live up to their full potential. However, the suggestion that as a child develops, that suddenly on the anniversary of their 6th birth date, that suddenly any treatment after that will not provide any benefit to them is a gross error and a mistake. And I don't know how such a statement reflecting as fact came into the judgment, because it simply isn't true. I know many parents of autistic children who have told me that, in fact, some of the greatest leaps and steps forward in development of their autistic children occurred after the age of 6, between 6 and 7 or 7 and 8, and that they benefited tremendously from the initial groundwork and foundations that were laid during the years prior to age 6. But the treatment can certainly help the children beyond that.
I take it part of your argument, too, sir, is that if we as a society and we as taxpayers don't help these kids while they're young, then we're going to be paying for them when they're older.
Well, this is the irony of the situation. When the government and politicians and the judges in the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada talk about the lack of resources, they're fundamentally misleading taxpayers and Canadian citizens across the country, because, in fact, an untreated autistic child will become an untreated autistic adult, and that will require, has historically been demonstrated, pretty well a lifetime of institutionalization and support costs. Now, you know how much it costs to keep an inmate in prison these days, about $110,000 a year. How long does it cost to keep an autistic adult in an institution? Perhaps a fraction of that, but still a huge portion. You multiply, do the math, and what you have is a lifetime of massive costs that will exceed $1 million easily. What intensive intervention therapy up front in a child's life immediately following diagnosis, it gives them a chance to develop to the extent potentially of becoming independent or at least semi-independent adults. And then, in the case of where the studies have shown up to 47, 48% of these children can become fully functioning, normal, indistinguishable from their peers, these kids will eventually become tax-paying adults, quite the reverse of being a burden on the state. So when the government and the courts say that they can't afford it or that this is a savings for the taxpayers, they're making a huge mistake, because down the road, we're going to be paying exponentially a much greater, higher rate for the support costs for autistic adults. And it's in our collective interest to provide the treatment without waiting lists, and without this age 6 cutoff. I can't think of any other disease for which there's an age cutoff.
In your personal case, sir, your son was diagnosed at age 2, and then you received some assistance as long as he was getting this behavioral therapy. How much is it going to cost you if you want to continue this treatment without the government helping you out?
Well, my son was diagnosed when he was still 2 years old, and the next day after the diagnosis, we hand-delivered our application forms to the Ontario Preschool Autism Program, which isn't run by the Department of Health. This is one major problem. I think this is a health issue for the youngest kids there, and it should be dealt with under Medicare. And the thing is that they told us, look, you're on a waiting list. We can't tell you when, but it's in your interest in the meantime to immediately resort to the private sector to undertake a home-based private ABA-IBI treatment program. Well, in the first 11 months alone, it cost my wife and I over $40,000. Now, We waited 15 months before we finally got financial assistance from the Ontario government by the time our son was 4. Now he's about to have that assistance cut in half in September just because, according to the government, he should be going to school, even though he's nowhere near ready for school and will likely regress if he spends any time in school without this form of treatment. And then when he turns 6 in January, again, he's going to be 100% cut off from assistance, forcing my wife and I to make some very serious, hard decisions, including possibly taking our son home for continuation of the home-based program at a cost of about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Now, that's unsustainable for us in the long run. We'll do what we can for our son. We'll continue to fight for autism treatment for him and for everyone else and for those yet unborn who will still be diagnosed. It's inconceivable to me that in a country as developed and civilized as Canada, that's boasts for so many decades of having a universal health care plan, that we would treat our autistic children in this country as 10th-class citizens like this. All in spite of McGuinty's own electoral promise in writing during the last provincial election, in which he acknowledged that the age 6 cutoff to treatment was discriminatory and promised if he became premier of the province that he would do away with it.
Andrew Kovchuk, good luck to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back here at CTV News Net.